Okay, I think we'll get started if that's okay with everybody. So I'm Debbie Ryby. I'm going to be hosting today's seminar. I'm just going to give a really brief introduction to the seminar series before we get started with our first talk, as this is the first event in this series. It's fabulous to see over 50 people on the call today, which is absolutely excellent. So for the first of these talks in this series, it's really fantastic to see so many people coming together, literally from all over the world. I can see colleagues certainly from Japan and the UK and India, and I'm sure there are lots of other countries represented across all of you that have joined today as well. So thank you very much for all joining this session. So I'm just going to share my screen again and take you through a little bit of an introduction to the series and how it's going to work and why we've developed this this seminar series that we're starting today. So I'm hoping that you can see my slides.
Yes.
Yep, great. That's a good start, isn't it? Welcome to the Global Neurodiversity Seminar Series. I'm Debbie Ryby. As I said, I'm a professor in the UK, and Dr. Sahana Rajan is also here with us. And together we have developed this new seminar series that we hope will bring people together from all over the globe to talk about a really wide range of different issues related to neurodiversity. Excuse me, and hearing from lots of different researchers conducting very different types of research and studies and doing practice. So we've got practitioners involved as well in lots of different countries, which we think is really important at this point in our understanding of neurodiversity and the focus that it has within research across the globe. So I'm a professor of developmental psychology here at Durham University in the UK. I've been in Durham, which is in the northeast of England, for those of you that aren't from the UK, for over 10 years. And my area of research, I'm a developmental psychologist, and I conduct research largely on autism and on Williams syndrome as well. And it's great to see collaborators from across the globe on the call as well. So it's great to see some of you here that we work with as well. Sahana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Debbie. So, hi everyone. I'm Sahana from the Center for Neurodiversity Studies at OP Jindal Global University. We are located in India. We are a relatively young center. We started in 2022, but we're doing some really exciting work, and we work at the crossroads of disability studies, neuroscience, and social justice. What makes us unique is also our focus on bringing global South perspectives to the forefront of neurodiversity conversations. We hope to challenge some of the dominant Western ways of thinking about neurodiversity. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what we are working on. Right now, we are looking into a research project about neurotypicality of classrooms, about questioning certain assumptions of what a typical student should look like. We are really interested in understanding how these assumptions might be creating barriers for students who think and learn differently. One of the things that I'm very excited about is how we put our ideas into practice in our campus. So we have take our example, like, Comfort Cave. So it's a signature event for our ADHD Awareness Month and Autism Awareness Month. As a new center, we're also very thrilled to build connections across global South and global North. So our partnership with Durham, it was never really just about academic collaboration. Just like Debbie said, it's about bringing together different perspectives on neurodiversity from around the world and trying to amplify voices. So we have people from Madagascar also joining in April. So we're really trying our best to develop approaches together which reflect the diverse ways in which neurodiversity is understood and experienced globally. That's broadly. By the way, I work on care ethics in higher education. I'm also exploring ontology of neurodiversity. That's something I work in, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with a lot of you. Back to you, Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, also, I should just put it out. I'm also an autistic person, so I just realized I can't say that here very openly. So yes, okay, back to Debbie now. Yes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sahana. Sahana's introduced the Centre for Neurodiversity Studies at OP Jindal Global University, and this initiative very much is across our two research centres. so the Centre for Neurodiversity and Development at Durham University. I'm one of the co-directors of that centre, and we're going to hear our first talk in the series actually from the other co-director of the centre, so I'll let you hear about that in a second. But we are a psychology-led but interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research centre focused on aspects of neurodiversity. We have a particular expertise around autism and also around education and neuro-inclusive education. And again, you're going to hear about that today. But we're really keen on multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary collaborations. We don't have any boundaries. We're happy to include all disciplines and methodologies in the work that we conduct. We really crucially partner with a really wide range of stakeholder groups and experts by lived experience, and that's really crucial to what we do. And as you'll hear from the talk today, we're really passionate about translating research into practice as well and making a positive impact for the lived experience. So you can see there's lots of synergies between our research centre and the research centre at OP Jindal Global University, and we really wanted to be able to use that synergy to develop this seminar series that we thought would be able to speak to the work that we do and the work that many others are doing around the globe. We have decided that the best way to start this collaboration would be through an open forum for this monthly online seminar series. So the talks will take place every month. So the second Wednesday of each month, we'll be having the seminar series. We'll send out the information for the next talk at the end of each one that takes place. They very much will go across disciplines, especially as we get up and running throughout the seminar series throughout 2025. We've got speakers already lined up for every month of this year, which is fabulous. And as I say, there's really a breadth of disciplines. Some are very much about single disciplinary studies, some are interdisciplinary in nature. And we want to hear about that breadth and across different areas of research methods from practitioners as well as researchers to try and get that diversity in the sort of talks that we're hearing. Our speakers come from all over the globe, so where they're coloured in blue, this is where our speakers come from that we've already got lined up within the seminar series. So it's great that we've been able to get people around the world involved in what we're doing, and as I say, both from practitioners and from academic researchers. And really crucially are the people that have signed up for the seminar series. So you guys, which is absolutely fabulous. There's over 450, in fact, over 475 people now registered for the seminar series as a whole. So it's great to see about 90 people on the call today. We appreciate that not everybody will be able to attend every talk. We are recording the talks and we'll be endeavouring to put them up onto YouTube linked to our research centres. So we'll be able to share the recordings of talks if there are ones that you want to attend but can't. When you're doing something of this nature, it's very difficult to find the ideal time, especially time zone wise. And I really appreciate that it's no good to say good morning to some of you because it's evening time and vice versa. And I know so there's huge variability in where people are based. So it's great to see this spread across the globe in terms of people who have signed up for the seminar series. I think that will really help to add to the diversity of views and opinions and experiences. And I hope that this hearing from speakers will be a really important opportunity to thinking about how this global movement around neurodiversity is really growing and emerging across the globe. So as I say, we've got a monthly schedule already outlined for this year, and we'll be hoping this will be on a rolling basis going forward. We'll tell you about the next event that's upcoming as we go through the series. You can also find all of this information on the Centre for Neurodiversity and Development at Durham's webpage, and there's a link to that in the email that I sent out about today's talk as well. So we'll make sure you've always got that information. As I say, there will be diversity in the type of studies that are being talked about and views from practitioners as well across this series. So you're not here to hear from me today. The most important thing is that we get started with the first of our talks in the seminar series. So I'm really pleased to be able to introduce Professor Mary Hanley from here in our Centre for Neurodiversity and Development at Durham University in the UK. Mary's the co-director alongside myself for the Centre for Neurodiversity and Development. Mary's research has focused on aspects of attention, sensory arousal and anxiety associated with autism and neurodivergence in terms of neurodevelopmental conditions. And she's really taken this leap from focusing on the research to being able to translate that into practice. And we're going to hear today about supporting autistic and neurodivergent learners at school with the AAA project, which stands for Attention, Sensory Arousal and Anxiety, and think about how she's taken that research base and translated it into practice to support learners. So I'm going to hand over to Mary to introduce herself. Just in terms of sort of etiquette, I think I should have disabled the chat and enabled the Q&A. I think I have. Let's see if that's worked. So if you do have questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A and we'll try and get through some questions near the end. Please make sure you mute yourself while we've got the speaker talking so that we can hear the speaker. We are recording the talk today, so you'll be able to listen back as well if you want to. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to Mary. There we go. Mary, you should be able to share now.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my slides. Can you just let me know if you can see my slides, okay?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Yeah.
All right, super. Okay. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you very much, Sahana. I am really delighted to be able to give the opening talk for this Global Neurodiversity Seminar Series. I know that there's a really broad and diverse audience of people who've joined the call. I know we've got academics and practitioners and people here in the UK, but equally throughout the world joining us. So I'm really excited to see the kinds of dialogue and collaboration that this seminar series fosters. Debbie's already introduced me, so I don't really feel I need to do that again. I'm going to be talking to you about the work that myself and Debbie have been doing here in the Centre for Neurodiversity and Development, which is all about supporting neurodivergent learners at school. And it's involved the translation of research to practice and impact on something that we call AAA. And put very simply, AAA is a way of thinking about a set of related issues that many neurodivergent learners face at school. And these are to do with differences and often difficulties with attention, sensory arousal and anxiety. So just to give you a brief overview, I'm going to outline some of the key issues that are faced by autistic and neurodivergent learners to begin with. I'm then going to tell you in more detail about some of the research that we've done that underpins this idea and this concept of AAA. I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we've gone about translating this research to practice and impact. And then I'm going to tell you about new research that is ongoing at the moment that's very much come from what we've done with AAA. So really, throughout the talk, I'm going to try to show the connection between research and impact, how our research has led to real-world impact, but how in turn that impact work has shaped the new questions and the new work that we're doing at the moment. Before I get into that, really, I think given the diversity of the audience that we have, it's really important to be clear on the context for the work I'm talking about. It's all been carried out in the UK, within the UK education system that we have here. And although I know there'll be many similarities between our system and the context that many of you are in internationally, I know there'll also be likely many differences. And so it's just important to outline some of the key contextual factors that have shaped the work that I'm talking about. For example, in the UK, it's estimated that approximately 15 to 20% of children and young people are neurodivergent. And by that I mean, for example, have diagnoses of neurodevelopmental differences like ADHD, or they're autistic or dyslexic, for example. We know that neurodivergent children and young people often have additional needs in the educational context that require additional support and require reasonable adjustments in school in order for these kids to be able to achieve. In the UK, a really important means to providing that support is through what we call an EHCP, okay? That just stands for those of you who are unfamiliar, an education and healthcare plan. And essentially, it's the legal document that sets out the needs and the assessed needs of a child or a young person and how those needs should be met through support. And the reason I explain that is because when we look at the government data on EHCPs, we can see that currently autism is the most common primary need among pupils in our schools at the moment. And looking at our population, if you like, of autistic learners, we know that 73% of those in the UK are placed and educated in mainstream schools. So there's some important contextual factors. If we think for a moment specifically about autistic learners and we look at the research literature as to how that group of young people are doing in our schools at the moment, I think it's fair to say the picture is largely negative. For instance, we have data on an academic attainment gap between autistic pupils and their non-autistic peers. We know that this group of young people are more likely to be excluded from school than pupils without additional education needs. We know that this group of young people are more likely to experience bullying at school. Very sadly, only about a quarter are happy at school. The vast majority are not happy at school. And we know that the majority really would feel that school would be a better place if there was greater understanding of their needs, and particularly of autism among teachers and school staff. And something we're hearing an awful lot about now and have been in the most recent past is the attendance crisis. So this is the problem that we see whereby we have significantly increasing rates of children and young people who are classed as persistently absent from school. And that means that they are absent for more than 10% of the time, but actually the absence rates vary, and we've got a significant group of kids who are absent most of the time. And we have some data now that shows, I mean, the attendance crisis is a complex problem, right? But we do have data to indicate that neurodivergent kids are overrepresented in this group of children and young people who are persistently absent. I've honed in here on autistic learners, and indeed most of the research I will refer to in this talk has been done with autistic learners. But I hope that you will see that the relevance of everything really that I'm talking about today, and particularly the AAA impact work, is for all neurodivergent learners more broadly. And even though what I've just spoken about are some of the key contextual factors around neurodiversity in school life here in the UK, we also know that for at least some of these issues, there is literature and evidence that there are similar issues and difficulties across different parts of the world, although research is predominantly focused on the global north at the moment. The next thing I want to do is just to get you for a minute thinking about the school and particularly the classroom environment as the place where children and young people engage in some of their most important formal learning. This image by no means represents all classrooms in the UK. There's a very much a diversity of how our classrooms look. But I do use it to illustrate a key point, and that is that classrooms are very busy multisensory environments. There really are a lot of things that children have to filter out and ignore in order to be able to pay attention and learn in this kind of setting. And actually, when you think about it, kids, by and large, do really well to learn in what is quite a busy multisensory environment. For example, there often tends to be lots of visual sensory stimuli in the environment, like classroom displays on classroom walls. Classrooms tend to be noisy. There tends to be a lot of noise and bustle because there could be upwards of 30 other kids in a classroom with a teacher and with various other teaching and support staff, with people coming and going. It can often be quite an unpredictable environment. And like I say, most kids actually, when you think about it, they do surprisingly well in this kind of environment. But for a significant minority of children and young people, it's really difficult to be in an environment like this, and even more difficult to learn in an environment like this. And that's especially true for kids who've difficulties with attention, sensory arousal, and anxiety. And we know from a huge body of literature that these tend to be things that are especially different for autistic learners, but also for a whole range of other neurodivergent children and young people too. We've been interested, myself and Debbie and our team, in understanding engagement and learning for autistic children and young people for a number of years now, and really thinking about the role of attention differences, sensory differences, and heightened anxiety. And what I want to do now is just give you some very brief examples of some of the work that we've done. And really at this point, I'm giving overviews, very brief overviews of some of the work that we've done, to give you a sense of what underpins what I'll talk about in relation to AAA. So for example, we've done eye tracking work with autistic and non-autistic children. And this work was all about understanding the control of overt attention during a lesson when there are lots of other interesting things to look at, like classroom displays. So it was an eye tracking study with video-based lessons where we were able to systematically manipulate whether there were classroom displays or not. And put simply, what we found was that displays are attention capturing for all children. That probably won't come as a surprise, but they're much more attention capturing for autistic children. And what we found was that the pattern of attention to these displays led to distraction and impacted on learning. So there were lower learning scores the more attention were paid to displays. We've replicated this work in a real life scenario. And that's where we had autistic and non-autistic children do classroom tasks for us in a purpose-built mini classroom. We video recorded the children and we looked at task engagement behaviour, and they did these tasks under various different sensory conditions, like, for example, where there was lots of displays present, or in another condition where there was classroom noise, and so on. What we found here was that visual information in the form of classroom displays, again, negatively impacted task engagement. So there was much more off-task behaviour when there was more classroom displays in our mini classroom. But again, it was much more so for the autistic children who took part. And really what this evidence highlights is that sensory aspects of the classroom are important. And in this case, we highlight visual features in the form of displays because they can impact attention and learning, in particular for autistic children. Now, separately, we've done questionnaire and interview work with parents and teachers, and this has really been about probing sensory experiences at school with the aim of trying to understand the impact that sensory differences have in terms of learning for autistic young people. The headline from this work is that they have a huge impact. It's mostly negative, and that's because of auditory, visual, and tactile experiences. So loud noises, lots of classroom noise, overstimulating visual environments, unexpected touch from other people, like at assembly or during group work or even on the corridor. And the biggest impact of these experiences is in relation to distress and anxiety. This is something parents and teachers have told us time and time again. And I use this quote just to illustrate the nature of what in this case, a parent and other parents have told us. She either appears anxious or angry. How can you possibly learn with all that adrenaline rushing through you? It's like asking someone to do long division when they're free falling from a plane. It's not going to happen. I think this is a really powerful and also a really useful quote for two main reasons. One, it shows that the level of anxiety that some of these children and young people experience is so high, it just renders them unable to think or do anything else. It also speaks to the fact that a teacher could be asking a child or a young person to do something that they think is relatively straightforward. And maybe that child or that young person was able to do it yesterday or last week. But because of how anxious they feel in that moment, that thing that was straightforward yesterday is now like asking them to do something when they're free falling from the plane. It's just really impossible. All of this really maps onto what autistic adolescents have told us themselves in interview work that we've done. They really identify with this core set of AAA issues as really impactful on their learning and on their school life. And this is just one quote to illustrate from a young person. I think mainly it's worth understanding that for people like me, our senses, we get sensory overload much faster than neurotypical people. I can only handle so much noise or something. Other kids can cope, but being in a noisy classroom, I can't. And so the concept of AAA is really something that emerged from across this body of work that we've been doing over a number of years on different projects, really, projects that were looking separately at attention and arousal and anxiety. But the interconnectedness of these three issues really kind of came through. And that's where the idea of AAA came from. It's all about using the evidence to understand each of these issues, crucially to understand them in the school context and how they play out, but also it's about seeing the connections between them. It's a framework really for understanding these issues and why they impact so many autistic and neurodivergent learners at school. So I'm now going to tell you a little bit about the translation work that we've been doing. Because actually a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last few years has been focused on the translation element, on getting this out to educators in schools in order to help support autistic and neurodivergent young people. And this translation work all started with a collaboration that we have in the centre with the communication and interaction team at Durham County Council. And for those of you outside of the UK, Durham County Council is our sort of local government, local authority, and they offer government-funded services to support schools. And the communication and interaction team is a multidisciplinary team of specialist advisors, so specialist inclusion and advisory teachers and psychologists, for example, whose role it is to directly support children and young people in schools where they have social communication and interaction needs. And when we were working with the team, we were sharing our research with them, and they were saying to us that these are exactly the kinds of issues that they see most often in schools, and that they felt there were real gaps in understanding in these needs and how to support them, and that being able to share the evidence would be really helpful to try and raise understanding and change practice. And that was the basis for which our AAA training came from. And everything that we've done on AAA in terms of the translation has been done in collaboration with our partners in the communication and interaction team at Durham County Council. So what we did was set about making online training, and this training was co-designed with autistic people, with educators, with parents, and as I say, with the team at Durham County Council. We put it online to maximise the reach, to get it out to as many people as we could, and it's freely accessible to anybody who wants to register to use it. It is targeted at educators and about thinking about these issues in school, but we know that 85% of those who've used it so far are educators, but equally it's been accessed and used by a lot of parents, for example, who want to better understand the needs that their kids have at school. The training takes about an hour and a half to do from start to finish, although it is self-paced, so you can start and stop and come back to it as you need to. And it's structured around three main sections. The first section is psychoeducation, so the nature of attention arousal and anxiety and the evidence that we have to help us understand these constructs. The second section is the research evidence, more or less what I've just spoken to you about. So examples from studies that we've done that can exemplify AAA issues in context, and this is put forward in a very accessible way. And the final section is a support package. So we call it our AAA toolbox. And this is a package of about 35 practical support strategies that were developed in collaboration with the team at Durham County Council. And these are practical strategies that educators can implement and sort of tailor to the pupils that they're working with in the school and in the classroom. And there are strategies for each aspect of AAA. Currently, AAA is available only in English. And we launched it in March 2022. And that's, as I say, that's the web link there, aaa.durham.co.uk. And the key principles really that run or sort of underpin the training is about using the evidence to see these connections, crucially understanding the impact of the classroom and the school environment, and that small changes can actually make quite a big difference for individual children. We launched the training in March 2022, and in the time since launch, we've had over 8,500 people use it. The website collects evaluation data from users, and the data that I'm going to share with you now has come from an evaluation of data gathered in the first year following launch. And at that point, we had just over 4,000 users, and of those, just over 1,000 had given us evaluation data. And just some main points and main headlines. Of those 1,136 people, 94% felt they'd learned new information. 97% thought it would help them support neurodivergent children and young people in schools. And really crucially, 81% said they would change something that they did on the basis of the training. Now, we really wanted to understand what it was that people said they would change. And so we've done some analysis of qualitative responses around this. And essentially, it's four main things. These people, most of whom, 85% of whom are educators, say they'll share the knowledge gained and they'll share the training with others. They'll manage their classroom sensory environment differently, notably thinking about minimising distractions. They'll use the AAA toolbox to implement new strategies, and that they'll change their overall approach. And this in particular was really important for us. People said things like, I find the whole thing invaluable. I feel I've children displaying these behaviours, but I didn't recognise what was behind them. How what might look like angry or anxious behaviour can be a response to sensory experience, so unpicking the why. This was really reassuring to us because this was exactly what we were trying to achieve with the training, to change understanding and to change practice. We are doing some work tracking how people use the training over time. Now, obviously, the numbers fall off quite a bit when you begin to track people over time. And here is just some initial data from a cohort of 106 people. And I think it's on average about 6 months after they use AAA. And basically what they say, this cohort, that 8 out of 10, 6 months down the road have changed their practice. 96% have used the practical strategies and 91% have found those really useful. So I think what we have so far is an emerging but strong picture of positive impact from AAA. And we know that of the school staff that have used it, it's a wide variety. It's teachers, it's teaching assistants, it's school leaders, and we know it's had a wide geographic spread as well. So it's been used the length and breadth of the UK, but really pleasingly, it's also been picked up internationally as well. So here on the world map, in purple, we have regions of the world where we've had uses of AAA. So it's been used in Europe, North America, and Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, Japan, Hong Kong, Cambodia, Vietnam, etc. So the spread of reach of AAA internationally really gives us confidence that people are finding it useful and they are sharing it widely among their colleagues. And we know that people in these different settings internationally are also finding the training useful. So Debbie led on some work with one particular school, the Overseas Family School in Singapore. And they did a whole school approach. So they got all of their staff to do the online training together. And of that 25 school staff, again, similarly very positive evaluations and feedback in terms of increasing knowledge and confidence and desire to change practice on the basis of doing the training. The whole sort of program of work that we're doing on translation of AAA is constantly evolving. So for instance, the online training largely attracts people, when you think about it, who are self-motivated to learn about the challenges that autistic and neurodivergent kids face. But what about those people who don't know that they need to know about AAA, if you like? We've been coming up with new ways to try and get that message out to different groups. And for instance, we've developed a whole school in-person version of our training. So something that in the UK, we call them SENCOs, the staff members who are responsible for leading support for kids with additional needs. So it's something that a SENCO in a school can actually deliver with a whole school staff themselves. And the early work that we've done on this, which has involved delivery to over 146 school staff across 4 schools, has again been exceptionally well received, as the infographic on the right shows. So this version of trying to get the message out seems to be working really, really well as well. But we've also been thinking about ways of embedding AAA as part of teacher training into the teacher training curriculum. And the idea here is that the next generation of educators have this knowledge and understanding from the outset. And this is something that both aspects of translation is something that we're working on at the moment, and we're going to continue to grow into the near future. So far I've told you about the research that we've done that underpins AAA and how we've gone about translating that research into practice to have impact. And in the final part of the talk, I want to actually talk about new research that has very much been informed by and motivated by the work that we've done on AAA. And that is work on school distress and school success. Something that we've heard an awful lot about since we launched AAA, particularly from parents, but also from teachers, is I wish I'd had this before my child started to struggle to attend school. So in other words, we have this group of children and young people who have found school life very challenging for a long time, and they're now at the point that they're struggling to attend. And as I mentioned from the outset of the talk, in the UK, we hear a lot in the media and in the news, really quite regularly, about the current attendance crisis that we have and these sort of increasing rates of persistent absences and how much they've grown recently. And we have data, as I mentioned before, to suggest that neurodivergent children and young people are overrepresented in this group of kids who really struggle to attend school. And I could give a whole other talk on attendance and school distress, but for now, I'm really just going to highlight the work that our PhD student, Chloe Fielding, is doing currently. Chloe's work is all about understanding attendance difficulties for neurodivergent learners as a broad group of learners and why they can struggle to attend school. And the first phase of this research has been about hearing the voices of neurodivergent young people who experience difficulties attending and school distress. Because we know there's a gap in the literature in particular in terms of what these young people think and feel. Most of what we know comes from parents and teachers. And as part of the first phase of this work, Chloe's interviewed 13 neurodivergent young people aged 11 to 16 years in mainstream schools. So what you can see here is the thematic map that resulted from the interview work that Chloe did, speaking to why these young people, the insights that these young people give about their attendance difficulties. The first one is about the school environment, the whole school environment, and there's many different layers to what the problem is here. The first one is that it's a sensory nightmare. It's a sensory nightmare, and I've touched on this already as to why. This makes school a very difficult place for these young people to be. Many of these young people find interactions with peers and teachers alike quite difficult. It's an environment where everything is constantly changing, and that's really difficult when you're anxious and you find uncertainty hard to manage. And all of this leads to the experience of an onslaught of stress. There's little time to recover on a school day or in a school week where you're in back-to-back classes. in this sensory, very difficult sensory environment. It's just non-stop for these young people. The second thing the young people highlight is that they feel they meet a real lack of understanding and support from school staff, that their support needs are not met, even in the cases where there should be and maybe possibly are support plans in place. There's very little understanding and there's very little flexibility in the school system. The third thing the young people spoke about was the importance of understanding the multiple different versions of how school distress presents. There's no one way school distress presents. How it looks in one person will be very different to how it looks in the next person. One person may not show signs of school distress in the context of the school day, but come home and it all spills out. Another person might show, meltdowns in the context of the school day. It's all very different. But irrespective of that, it has a devastating impact on mental health for these young people. And very sadly, Chloe had too many reports of self-harm and suicidal ideation as a result of school distress. And the final thing that these young people talk about is, well, what's the alternative? For this group of young people, there are no viable alternatives other than not attending school. Changing school is not feasible because you only have to go through all of the same issues again, albeit in a different place. I'm going to share with you one quote from the interview work that Chloe did. I will give a trigger warning. It's very powerful and it is very upsetting, but it really speaks to how these young people feel. And this person said, imagine a pit, and that pit is school. The pit is full of lions. Every day you've been told to jump in, no matter how much pain it's going to cause you. But that's what everybody else does. But everybody else has this very powerful armor on that the lions can't penetrate. I've not got that armor because I'm different. The Senko will go, here, you can have half of it. Half of it I'm managing, and the other half I'm in a pit of lions and I'm not protected. The quote very powerfully sums up the experiences and what it feels like to be in a mainstream school when your support needs are not being met, and what that really leads to. And what Chloe is doing with this work is she is triangulating multi-informant perspectives. So she's doing similar work with parents and teachers. And she's also doing work in alternative provisions that are working well for kids who previously struggled to attend. And the question here is what helps and what works. And so over the course of Chloe's work, we really hope that we're going to be able to use this and translate to practice to have impact with kids who are struggling to attend, and that's work that something we're working towards. The final bit that I wanted to share with you was work that we've been doing with Jess Hurst, another PhD student on our team. And Jess's work is all about looking at neurodiversity in school life with a slightly different lens and asking questions about the barriers and facilitators for school success for autistic pupils in mainstream secondary schools. And this is Jess's at the end of her PhD. She's writing up her thesis at the moment, and it's a large program of work, and it has multiple levels to it. So some of the work involved defining what school success actually means to autistic pupils, unpicking what impacts it, and then she's done a big phase of work that's about how you can measure some of the central constructs that we keep referring to and use those to empirically predict school success. I can't tell you about all of Jess's work, so I'm just going to share two brief findings. And the first one is about what does school success mean? Because for the most part, school success is synonymous with academic achievement. And Jess did some questionnaire-based work, which is a large sample of autistic and non-autistic adolescents, and also a group who had just left school, asking them about what school success means. And yes, academic achievement is in there, but it's not just academic achievement. It's quality of school life, and it's developing life skills, sorry. So school success is much more than your exam results at the end. And it's similar, similar things were said by both autistic and non-autistic young people. The second point from Jess's work that I wanted to share is that when you try to understand what impacts school success, and here she did that by interviewing autistic young people and their parents, there are four main aspects. And the key here is that when each of these are working well, they facilitate school success, and when they don't, they are key barriers. So these are to do with the school environment, especially sensory issues, relationships with others, both peers and teachers, managing anxiety, and again, coming back to this issue of understanding, particularly among school staff. So young people see these as the key areas to unlocking success at school. And when they're good and managed well, they support school success. And when they're not, they have a really negative impact. So I think what's emerging from this new work on school distress and school success is that we're seeing two sides of the same coin, you know, with different groups of autistic and neurodivergent young people. And they're all converging around the same things, that those issues that are barriers and often give rise to challenges, the school environment, especially sensory experiences, anxiety, the need for support and understanding. These are the areas we need to target for change in order to avoid school distress and subsequent attendance difficulties, and to support our neurodivergent young people to flourish and thrive and experience the success that they want in school. AAA is a small part of the effort to do that, and it addresses some of these issues. So it addresses thinking about the school environment and thinking about supporting and reducing anxiety impacts. And it's really trying to get at the understanding and the support issue. But for sure, there is much more that needs to be done. So just to summarise, the research evidence on AAA can help us to understand why many autistic and neurodivergent learners can struggle at school, particularly in terms of the challenges that the school environment can present. We've been trying to change understanding and support neurodivergent learners in terms of AAA with our online training, and the evidence of impact so far is really positive, but it's very much an evolving story and something that we're sort of constantly working on. It has been the motivation for new research on school distress and school success. And I think this work is really emphasising the core areas where change is needed. And although I've emphasised how this work has come from a UK context, it has international relevance. Having said that, there's so much more learning that we need to do here. So much of this work has come from the global north, and there's so much we need to do by harnessing what can be learned from different educational contexts around the world. Broadly speaking, it's certainly true for the UK. We need cultural change in our education system. That's not going to happen overnight. Our system is mostly a one-size-fits-all, and it's so very exam, academic achievement oriented. But while we work towards that, research evidence can make an impact and lead to those small changes, which can actually make big differences to individual children. And I'm just going to finish on this quote from a parent to exemplify that point. My son's teacher completed the AAA training, implemented some changes in the classroom for him, and we can honestly say his anxiety around school has reduced. His focus has improved, he's achieving, he's rightly proud of how well he's done, as are we. I'm just going to finish up by acknowledging and thanking the various teams that are behind AAA, the fabulous team of academics and researchers that we have here at the Centre for Neurodiversity and Development, our expert collaborative partners at Durham County Council who really made AAA something that had real authenticity for educators on the ground. Our panel, our advisory panel of lived experience experts who gave so much of themselves and their own experiences to help, again, make AAA something that I think most, that has real authenticity. Ella Willis, who's an autistic digital content creator who developed all the imagery that we use on AAA, and our fabulous technical team in our department, Elaine Standen and Simon Thirlbeck, who just keep the whole show on the road. And finally, just a thank you to all of you for your attention today, to everybody, participant families, everybody who's supported our research and translation, our collaborators, our funders. I've added the AAA web address again here at the end and my contact details for anybody who wants to get in touch.